Alrighty y'all, this is World Class Jerk, and today we're going to be discussing RTGs versus wind power in Astroneer. Now the thing is, I didn't really prepare this video in any way other than testing, so I don't really know exactly how I'm going to handle this one, so we're just going to wing it. Commentary may be weird and all that fun, but I do have like a cough and stuff, so I don't want to redo it any more times than I have to. Anyways, in order to figure out which one's better, first, the reason I'm using mediums instead of extra larges is because the mediums are better. Now, the last time that I said mediums are better than larges for these solar panels and wind vanes, I got some very mean comments telling me about how I was stating my opinion as if it was fact. So allow me to introduce a metric. Factually speaking, they are better as far as resource consumption, because the mediums take up less space than the extra larges, they take up less bytes than the extra larges, and they take up less resources than the extra larges for the amount of power you're getting back. On screen now, you will be seeing the amount of extra large turbines it takes to produce 120 units of power and the amount of space they take up. Here is mediums though, and they take up this much amount of space for 120 units of power. And it's cheaper. It takes up less space, and it is cheaper in more ways than one by bytes and resources. So by that metric, factually speaking, the mediums will be better, and so that's why I'm using them, because they are probably the best. Now, technically, the smalls might even be better because they just take ceramic instead of aluminum and ceramic, but I do not know if the ceramic ends up being too much since they put out less power, and also they don't look as good, so I'm using the mediums. But now that that's out of the way, we need to discuss something, because if we're going to figure out which one's better, we need to figure out how they put out their power, and the consistency really matters here. For example, we have the medium wind turbine. It produces 5 units of power, whereas the RTG produces 4. So right off the bat, it would seem like the wind turbine is better, but it's not always on. So we need to discuss how to get some consistency out of this thing, which basically means batteries, because you have to store that power and use it later, since it's not on all the time. Now the problem here is, if you have one medium wind turbine and one battery, each of them puts out 5 units of power. But eventually, the battery seems to run out from my testing, so if you want to produce 5 units of power, you want 2 wind turbines and 2 batteries, because only one battery can be powered by one wind turbine, so you do need a second wind turbine to get the second battery going, which basically means that this here power setup here will put out at least 5. But it can go up to about 20 if everything's going at once, so the consistency's still not really there, but it does have a bare minimum of 5, so it is still hard to compare the two, but this is the best we can probably do. So let's just say it probably averages around 10 units of power, but every once in a while it will dip down to 5, and if you really need it to, at sometimes it can go up to 20, but then you'll lose battery power, and then it'll probably have to recharge. So we'll just say that this right here puts out like 10 units of power usually, but sometimes 5, that's why we need the second battery. And so, it's kind of hard to compare the RTG, because one wind turbine puts out 5, and one RTG puts out 4. So how do we compare 5 to 4? With the power of math and multiplication, whatever. Anyways, look. 4 times 5, because we're saying that each of these puts out a bare minimum of 5, this would be 20 units of power. And so this right here is how you get 20 units of power in RTG form. So this right here at least puts out 20 units of power, and this always, no matter what, puts out 20 units of power. No more, no less, and that's the RTG's significant power thing, is that it puts out power significantly more. What am I saying? Look, I'm trying to say the RTGs are more consistent. That is their thing. That's why we like RTGs, because they do not ever change, and they will always put out what we want. And also, as you can see here, this right here being equivalent to this right here means that it puts out, it's more compact, it takes up less space to use RTGs. However, they are more expensive in bytes and resources by a significant degree. So obviously, even though RTGs are seeming to be better so far, it is still a late game thing. So really, the answer to our question here, as far as which one's better, I would still say the RTG is, but it really depends on what you want. And also, with the wind turbines and batteries, if you expand them and you keep adding more, either one can be better. It depends on which one you put more of down. It depends on which one you have more of. If you have a crap ton of wind vanes and batteries, then they're going to outpace RTGs, obviously. But if we're talking about space here, if we're talking about the amount of space it takes up, by that metric, RTGs are better. But at the same time, maybe you think that being cheaper is also better, so that would mean that the wind turbines are better. At any rate, though, you may want to use the wind turbines in the early game and then use the RTGs in the late game. And also, if you're wondering why this second row here, I forgot to mention that yes, this here collection of resources sometimes puts out 10 apiece. So this would be up to 40 altogether over here. So this would be the amount of RTGs to match that if this one's at max power. But actually, this one can go higher than that, but we're not going to discuss that because it will run out of battery juice if it does so. Oh, this video is so freaking weird. The commentary is weird, but I do not want to do it more than once because of this stupid cough. Speaking of the devil. Anyways, this is a more compact setup for the wind turbines if you decide to use those instead. Obviously, this also works with the RTGs. You can put them on this thing right here, and it will take up less space. And so, as you can see here, consistently, we can expect to get a bare minimum of 15 units of power. Basically, you take either the batteries or the wind turbines, and you divide the amount you have by 2, and then multiply it by its production of power, and that'll be the units you get consistently. So, for example, we have 6 wind turbines. We can expect a consistency of about what 3 of them would produce, which is 15 units of power. And obviously, you want 1-to-1 ratio for your batteries and wind turbines from my experience, because the batteries put out 5 units of power at most, but they also receive 5 at most. And that's the problem with the batteries. You cannot charge them faster than they put out power, which means that if your wind turbines are not on more than half the time, then you need more than one battery to do the work of one battery consistently, and so that is the issue here. Now that's all for this one, and I do realize that if you combine solar panels with wind vanes, which is probably the most ideal situation, then it's probably going to be a little bit better if you combine them just right. However, since I'm doing daily uploads this week, I did not want to get all that complex stuff interacting. Oh, also, this over here is like, it was just my way of drawing 5 units of power to test this. Not very relevant. Just wanted to mention that real quick. But yes, I do realize that adding in solar power would probably be the most ideal way. But yes, I did not have a lot of time. So I wanted to do just wind power in this video. And perhaps it is better to do solar as well. So hopefully, if I have more time in the future, I will cover topics like this in enough detail to where we really know the full answer in whole. But from what I can tell, wind on its own is not as good as RTGs in my opinion, of course. Because, I mean, maybe you prefer to just have a bunch of wind to overpower the fact that there's less per unit or whatever, which of course is just fine. But for me personally, I will always prefer the RTGs probably, and especially on vehicles, you want to use RTGs instead of wind, because wind does not put out enough to run a vehicle. Like, because being compact matters on vehicles is what I'm saying. The RTG puts out more power for its size consistently, and on a vehicle that matters a whole lot more because you don't want to waste any of your valuable space on vehicles. But anyways, that's all for this one right now, and so hopefully my cough goes away so I can get some like normal video action in here instead of this weird on the fly stuff. I mean, hopefully anyways, goodbye.